out there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so mad. The YouTube Studio auto defaulted back to the beta, so now every time I need to go to YouTube Studio and go back to the original, I have to keep toggling through it. It's annoying.
Really?
Let's see. See if I can get to this freaking control room. Ooh. Do we have anybody in the comments yet? I don't know why my computer's going so freaking slow. Oh, that's why. What is this? It keeps defaulting me to the beta. I don't know what this is. All right. Finally getting cooking. How's my volume to you, Boom? You picking me up all right?
Good. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, we got Just a Rican in his comics saying, yo, and Samoki Dude asking, what's up, guys? Not much. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Sorry I sound a little bit slumped. I just got back from the gym, so I'm pretty tired and sweaty and kind of gross. But any excuse to talk comics with this guy, I will gladly take advantage of. But let's get everything underway.
We
What is going on, guys? Welcome to what I believe to be the 27th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another member of the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics, whether it be stories, characters, constructs. We pretty much hit it all. And this, we're going to be going more throughout the publishing route. As you can see through the title, we're going to be discussing the current state of the DC Black Label line, where it's potentially heading in our humble opinions, and what we think of it so far. I think one of the reasons I brought this up to Boom earlier before we went live was that it's been about a year since they first announced Black Label. But before we get into it, of course, I am joined by the one, the only Comic Boom from the wee north. Let them know what's going on with your channel, brother.
Oh man. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on again. It indicates off air on my end. We're live on your end for sure.
Yeah. It looks
Okay.
like we're live. It looks like we're live.
Okay, that's good. Well, as far as what's on my end, I've just been wow, I've just been in enjoying life and working my butt off, and I'm almost hitting 600 subscribers on my channel, so I'm very surprised. I got a lot of subscribers. I was on Professor Bill's channel last week, and I got like 70 subscribers in like just less than a week. I couldn't believe it. It was just insane. So
There you go,
yeah,
man.
so things, and I'm actually technically doing fewer videos a week. So I don't want to jinx anything. I like having to work less and get more. So,
Hey, I mean, like
but
all your stuff is quality, so I don't think you have anything to worry about, man. You 100% deserve all the growth and more. So, very happy for you.
well, thank you.
Anytime, man. So now that we've gotten our illustrious co-host introduced, I think that it'd be a good time to break right into the topic. So again, it's been about a year since DC announced this Black Label line, and I personally felt like upon the announcement, they really were given the vibe that they were going to be going full throttle right out of the gate, right? Like, is that just me, or were you picking up on that too?
Oh, I was definitely picking up on that too. But I also think that a year ago, though, I think particularly obviously with the benefit of hindsight that we have, I think a year ago DC editorial was in somewhat of more of a state of flux than they appear to be now, and even up until recently with the whole Tom King fiasco on Batman, and even with the ongoing delays in Doomsday Clock, the slow movement away from Rebirth, it did seem like a year ago when they brought the DC label up, it created an air of excitement, I think, because the rest of DC seemed a little bit off kilter and a little bit disorganized. So the idea of the Black Label, I got the impression that it was out of continuity stories. It was creating an air of excitement that they could focus on something else because they were having a difficult time streamlining their mainstream universe of stories. And so it was something that we were all looking forward to, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was also obviously this element of, mature reader stories that we can get and absorb. And for me, I felt like really the DC Black Label was just serving the purpose that Vertigo did a couple of years back, where these creators could kind of tell the stories in their own sandbox and do their own thing and make their own independent creative choices outside of the continuity. Or maybe I would say it Black Label to me felt more like an amalgam of Elseworlds and Vertigo, really looking at it. But let's go down the list. So upon launch, and the DC Comics publishers announced Superman Year One from Frank Miller and John Romita Jr., Batman: The Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, which issue 1 came out last week. Batman Damned by Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo. We all know the ongoing struggles of that book as of, literally since it started. Wonder Woman Historia, The Amazons from Kelly Sue DeConnick and Phil Jimenez. Wonder Woman Diana's Daughter from Greg Rucka. The Other History of the DC Universe by John Redley. There was a Batman Joker book that they announced by what was his name? One of the big Image guys. I don't know what.
Batman Joker book, Image guys.
It was one of the original 7.
Will's Portaccio or something?
No, it wasn't Portaccio. Let me see. Let me look. This is gonna bother me. It starts with an S. Mark Silvestri. That's it. It was going to be written and drawn by Mark Silvestri. And obviously, we've also gotten the announcement over time that the sequel to Batman White Knight, Curse of the White Knight, was going to be part of Black Label, as well as the 3 Jokers, as well as now this new Joker and Harley Quinn story that absolutely no one asked for. And so they're loading us up with all of these really hollow promises. Like there was this image that was very clearly set, I think, in the beginning of them announcing the Black Label line. And then for me, and I think in general, they lost traction when they decided to bend the knee on the Bat Dick. Like, let's be 100% real. Not only did they make a fuss about it and remove it, they didn't reprint the first issue. I don't think to this day the first issue has been reprinted, and even independent of the Batwang, that book was selling like gangbusters. Like, that book sold 115,000 copies in its first day.
Yeah.
Imagine if you gave that book a second printing, and it's an $8 book. It's like, sales-wise, you would have had such a, and don't get me wrong, 115,000 copies is huge, but they would have had such a strong start to the Black Label line. Not to mention, I reviewed Batman Damned #1 way back when I first started the channel and really enjoyed it. Like, it was a solid first issue, and they absolutely killed the traction. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I got to compliment you. I think that's one of your best review videos that I ever watched, was your Batman Damned review. That was very well done. I encourage everyone to watch Dark Knight Nation's review of that.
Thanks, man.
That's the first thing. Second thing is, I don't really understand why they would kill the momentum like that. Now, again, I go back to my earlier point. I think all signs point to there's clearly disputes going on behind the scenes at DC editorial. My understanding is that Brian Azzarello himself came to blows with a particular editor. I can't remember her name, but who basically sort of insisted on the removal of the Batwang. But I will say this: I actually think that the struggles with Batman Damned, there should have been no reason why all the other issues needed to be delayed. I mean, so that there has to be another explanation. I mean, we can't all point to a Batwang as causing these massive delays.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think that it's also quite clear when you look at the sales data on the book stats data that DC Comics lost a lot in sales on their book sales. They went from second next to Amazon literally to ninth place, even, and Marvel's in eighth. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons why they cut their workforce back by 3%. We can't forget that DC has done some significant layoffs, 3% layoff of their forces, and they're streamlining into more of their core line. That's one of the reasons why, as you indicated earlier, you made the observation, and it was a very astute one, that the Black Label line is a lot of their core characters. You got Superman Year One, you got Batman Damned, you got two for Wonder Woman, Historia and Diana's daughter, and then even Joker and Harley. What do all those characters have in common? Those are the money makers. Those are the big names. Those are the naming lights that people are going to notice at the bookstores, notice at the retail outlets. And I think it just took time for them to get that in order. What I think has saved DC since then has been they've gotten their act together, I think, in more of their mainstream lineup with Justice League. And even with Tom King's Batman, as divisive as it is, it still sells a lot of comic books. And, with Detective Comics 1000, Action Comics 1000, they've had a lot of big events that have really kept their numbers up. So they've had a lot of stuff on their plate. And with Vertigo now being, rumor has it it's going to be shut down, I think now they can maybe take some of their staff, they're more successful. They're probably going to nitpick their staff, that take the best from the Vertical line in terms of their staff and editors and move that to Black Label. I think the hollow promise that you referred to might become a solid promise in the months to follow.
But that's the thing that scares me, is that, we go into this Black Label line and it was supposed to be total creative freedom for these teams, like it doesn't affect continuity. So why? There had to have been, and again, you brought up the running theory that Azzarello and Bermejo had a dispute with an editor, because looking at the release dates, issue 1 came out in September. Yeah. Like, that's what, 9-10 months. We're not getting issue 3, I don't think, until the end of the month. Yeah, June 26th. That is nuts. That is absolutely insane. And I think, just based on reading issue 2, you could kind of tell that, after receiving that pushback from editorial, maybe publishing, so on and so forth, Azzarello and Bermejo really started to, in my opinion, push what they could do. I think it was a spiteful move, because like just reading it, like issue 2 wasn't bad. I don't think it was a bad issue by any means. I know some people had problems with it, but you go into it and you're like, okay, like this went from like tasteful, explicit language, tasteful nudity, into let's see how many times we can drop the F-bomb. Let's see how many times we can talk about like a woman's body, and it was a little bit frustrating, because I can simultaneously see why these two top tier creators that some Okie dude had brought up in the chat below, saying that they are a dream team. Yes, they are, absolutely. Great creative team in comics, have a proven history of putting out some great content. But they get all this ridiculous pushback in a label where they're supposed to have all the freedom in the world. DC was the one, DC went to them and said, do you want to come do this book? They did their book and DC said no. I don't want to rehash the penis thing for too long, because I've shared my opinion. I think it's absolutely insane that soccer moms just wouldn't shut the hell up about their kid reading a book with a mature label on it. It's a shadow of a penis. I think that it has a lot to do with the double standard, like the fact that we can show women's bodies very explicitly in comic books, but when it comes to the shadow of Bruce Wayne's penis, not so much.
I'm just going to add to that. And before the live stream started, I did share with you, Dark Knight. I mean, Brian Azzarello, he also writes a series called Faithless, and he's got erotic covers that are drawn, and the erotic variant covers for Faithless. And again, written by Brian Azzarello, the same guy that wrote Batman Down. If I didn't know better, these are extremely hardcore covers. If I didn't know better, I think he was overcompensating for the fact that he got his Batwang censored. So, so if you want some exciting erotic hardcore porn covers written by Brian Azzarello or imagined by Brian Azzarello and drawn by great artists, check out Faithless.
Yeah, I mean, and we're yet to see whatever happens in book 3 of Batman Damned. You know, like obviously, I'm still going to pick it up. I think a lot of people are still going to pick it up, but I do very much think that. I mean, whatever. Like, remove the penis from the first printing and then give us a second printing. Why would you not reprint that book? Like, in my opinion, I think that book could have neared 250,000 copies because of the hype around it. The penis enough, but like just the hype around the story, it being the first Black Label book. The first issue got a lot of really positive buzz, like from myself, I believe from you as well, from a number of members in the comic book community. Why wouldn't you reprint it? Like the delays are one thing, right? Like we're chocked full of them. I mean, Jesus, doomsday clock, enough said. But like at least it's quality. At the end of the day, I'm not going to get mad about doing, like, yes, would I like it to come out quicker? Fine. Is it going to affect the quality of the story? No.
I do think though that it was a blunder. It was an editorial blunder. It should have been caught by editorial, or it was at first, but it was let go. I think Brian Azzarello has a very strong voice. He's got a powerful voice and a creator, but I think he got it by maybe lower editorial, but executive editorial came in and maybe put their foot down. Look, here's why I can kind of believe it, that this is Batman. This is Batman, and Batman, probably next to Spider-Man, Batman is the #1 licensed product on the, for superheroes.
Mm.
And, look, it's Batman encompasses everything. The 1966 Batman, the cartoons, everything. And, at the end of the day, Bruce Wayne showing his genitalia in any kind of comic book, look, there's a lot of hardcore adult orientated Batman stories. Look at Killing Joke. Killing Joke didn't need any nudity in it. I mean, and frankly, Batman Damned didn't need a Batwang in it. And
no.
Now again, I don't believe in restricting anyone's artistic freedom or creative freedom. But when you are dealing with a corporate powerhouse like Batman, and if there's lack of communication between the editors and the creators, I can see them stepping in. And I have to say, is it really stepping on creative freedom by blacking out Batwang? Was the intent of the story really compromised by blacking out the dick? I don't think so.
But right? Like looking at it this way, like it was an infringement on the creative, essentially the creative rights that the publishers, the editors were supposedly giving these artists. You know what I mean? Like that is like saying you can have a toy, but I'm going to take it away from you just before just before you get the peak of your enjoyment out of it.
No, you're just taking the dick off the toy.
Well,
most action figures don't have genitalia anyway. It's not a big deal.
I mean, whatever would be like the analogous penis of a toy. I don't know if I'm referring to an actual one. But there is obviously that element of restricting the creators after supposedly giving them the freedom to do this thing. But my biggest issue is, again, not reprinting the first issue, because not only is that a massive, massive loss in sales for DC, that is a massive loss in sales for the creators, because that they make some sort of like coverage on high sales. And we know for a fact, I think it would be safe to assume that book would sell upwards of 200,000 copies.
Well, that's right. But I think they're playing the long game. Whether we like it or not, whether I like it or not, or you like it or not, or any retailer likes it or not, the fact of the matter is that Batman Damned #1 is never going to be known as a Brian Azzarello story. It will always be known as the Batwang comic. That's it. And that's the metric upon which it will be judged. And I think that's why they didn't reprint it. It's that simple. I mean, you can't control, once that stuff gets out, they wanted to put a kibosh on it. they didn't want to have extra copies of Batman Damned #1 so people could go in and buy a comic book with the Batwing. I think that's what it is. I thought it was funny. I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you. But, got to remember, DC is more conservative than Marvel. I remember what Paul Levitz did with the issue of a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He actually recalled an entire production line because Alan Moore had a female douche product called Marvel in it, and they took it out. It was called Marvel, and it was a douche product. It was Alan Moore's swipe at Marvel. And when that was discovered after publication, Paul Levitz, publisher, it cost him tens of thousands of dollars to basically, put a stop on everything. And they did that. And I think there's still remnants of that conservatism in DC Comics, despite any suggestion to the contrary, to be honest.
It's just I just feel like it's such an awkward decision because I've seen DC sell out for less. And if you look at that book, right, let's figure that book probably would have sold. I think we can agree at least 2 times what it did at the end of the day. It would have sold close to, if not more than 2 times what it actually did. Sold about 115,000 copies.
Yeah.
115,000 times $8. Oh my God. Like 115,000 any comic book is astounding. But of an $8 book, that is ridiculous money. I think that like the smart move by far, if like I again don't agree with the cutting out of the penis, but if you had to do it, just cut it, just black it out for the second printing and keep printing the book. Because whether or not the book is going to be remembered as the Batwang book, regardless, you are like that 115,000 copies of that $8 book would give you another 2 spots pretty much worth of actual market value in like actual revenue. You know what I'm saying? Because it's 2 comic books worth for $8. If you figure the average comic is 4, you figure you sell two $4 books, another 115,000 copies. That's big. That is big, not only for sheer revenue, but just looking at the standing of the company as, a big competitor in the comic book market. Which, there again, you could go back to the creative freedoms kind of being impinged upon. But I really think that killed a lot of the momentum for a lot of people, because I even saw a lot of people, when Last Night on Earth, they're like, oh, that's a Black Label book? I don't know we were going to be getting Black Label books. Like going down the list, Last Night on Earth we're getting, and it's great. I love it. I'm going to be, I have a review that I've been editing that's going to be coming out soon. We have Year One finally coming out this month. The other history of the DC Universe has completely lost its release date. There is no longer a release date, and I know it did have one for a fact. Batman 3 Jokers, which has been thrown at us forever and a half, still doesn't have a release date.
Is that Black Label too?
Yeah, that's Black Label. 3 Jokers is Black Label.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then, the Wonder Woman books, neither of them have a release date. This new Joker Harley book has an October release date, but like, who the fuck asked for this book when we haven't gotten any of the stuff we've been promised? I think I am literally excited for every other book that we were promised a year ago than I am for a Joker and Harley book. And maybe that's just my personal opinion as a comic book fan, but I would much rather see DC deliver with consistency on the promises that they gave us over a year ago, which is problematic for me because I tend to take a lot of marketing decisions into consideration when I go to support a company, which is why I have a hard time supporting Marvel, because they strong arm LCSs, so on and so forth. So when I see these really off marketing tactics that also do have, however, minor infringements on the creative process for these creators that you can, that you told you can do what you want, it's just, who knows what's going on behind the scenes, but it's just what it all seems to be adding up to. And it's frustrating because at the end of the day, I'm a fan. And at the end of the day, like, Batman Last Night on Earth is the best thing I've read in months. Again, I'll say I'm not caught up with Doomsday Clock at all. And I know that's been raved about, but we could have, like, I just feel like this line could have been consistent with one book coming out every month at least. And it wouldn't move up a lot of the time scale if you really look at it. You know what I'm saying? It would keep a consistent flow for Black Label. You get consistent hype and buzz around it,
Yeah.
sales, because I think the Black Label in and of itself, just having that stamp on a book would sell more copies because people were excited for these more artistic ventures for these creators to go and
Well,
play around in.
I think I think we have to be careful here. I mean, their Black Label, I mean, they've had a couple of missteps. I'm prepared to call it a growing pain. Like, there's no question that the Batwang fiasco was a fiasco and it's unfortunate. But I mean, at the end of the day, Vertigo now is probably on its way of being canceled. Black
Sad.
Label, if they've got all these comics in a row, most of them are not scheduled with specific dates to come out yet. We could literally have a we're literally going to likely end up in a situation where we're going to have at least one Black Label comic book coming out every month. If you
Yeah,
look at when they and that's the good thing about it. And so, you know, with Vertigo gone, if that's replaced by Black Label, and every month we're getting a different Black Label, so that even though, for example, with Batman Last Night on Earth, it comes out every 2 months. Well,
mm,
that's a long time to wait, 2 months. And while that's unfortunate, it would be nice if we had, next month we had maybe maybe Rucka's Wonder Woman or something like that, or something to carry us over.
yeah,
If they continue on to do that, I mean, as I said, I'm prepared to grant them some growing pains here. The other thing, this isn't like Doomsday Clock, where Doomsday Clock is more frustrating with the delays because it's actually part of the mainstream continuity.
right.
With Black Label, because it's out of continuity, I think fans, at least I'm a little bit more inclined to be forgiving if it's out of continuity and it doesn't really, its absence isn't necessarily felt in the mainstream universe.
Yeah,
So,
I
you know,
think for me, it just gets to me that we literally went from December until what, the second or third to last day in May
yeah,
without a Black Label book. And
yeah,
like there was just so much hype around it, you know? Like I was so excited for Black Label, not only as a comic book fan, but as like a guy who drinks scotch and was like, "Ah, I like this little play on labeling here." But
yeah.
it, it's just frustrating to watch because I I think that pretty much any respective comic book fan that reads DC was excited for Black Label. And frankly, like I'm not excited for it. Am I excited for Last Night on Earth? Absolutely. But that's because that book in and of itself proved it with its own merits. Batman Damned, I really enjoyed issue 1. I really couldn't care about book 3. You could never give me book 3 at this point and I would not care. Which I
Yeah.
think it's a shame. I think it's an absolute shame that that happened because again, I think from the get-go I was just into the book. And I think a
Well,
lot of people were into.
one of the things that I really like about Black Label is that in even though it's advertised, I mean, again, I'll forgive the delays and not getting to a slightly off a different topic about Black Label.
Mm,
What I like about Black Label is, and Last Nights on Earth is an example of that, is that it, even though it's not technically in continuity with the mainstream universe, it's not completely out of continuity. I
right.
mean, even in the first issue here of Last Night on Earth, there's a reference to Doom. There's a reference to, after Doom being, it's built on the history of the world choosing Doom,
It's yeah,
and
well,
it's actually built on Snyder's Justice League.
it's also
Similarly, Batman Damned is built on the Killing Joke. So we have connections to the mainstream continuity, but not entirely. If so, it's really left up to the reader to draw whatever connections you want, and that sort of loose continuity, and you can choose to accept it or not. I kind of like that.
yeah, well, I mean, I think as far as, those books go, the Batman Dam takes place in like the Joker Lex Luthor universe that Azzarello and Bermejo have been building for God a decade now, more than a decade. And this Last Night on Earth is, I think it's more like an alternative future story. I think it is literally him doing his Dark Knight Returns. Like a lot of what happened in main continuity did happen very clearly. Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, their New 52 Batman run is the foundation for Batman Last Night on Earth, as well as where you had mentioned the Justice League title that Scott Snyder is currently working on, which I liked a lot. I thought it was really really cool, and did not expect Justice League to be coming into this at all. But that's what Scott Snyder does. He seeds everything really well. I've ranted a lot very clearly about my disappointments with the label. But the one thing I think, and I don't want to go too far in depth because I know you have a review and I'm going to be putting out a review for Batman: The Last Night on Earth, but I am just astounded at how good that book is. Like there is no controversy around it. It is just a well-crafted story that you could read in and of itself. But if you've been reading Scott Snyder's Justice League and if you've read his Batman run, it is so much more of a rich experience as a reader, which I absolutely love because I think obviously a lot of these books that are going to be coming out for Black Label are not going to have that context, and they will probably be great. But I just love what the creative team is doing on Batman: Last Night on Earth. If I can give Black Label any kudos, any thumbs up, they absolutely knocked this one out of the park.
Well, yeah, Snyder and Capullo have done a fantastic job. I mean, there are so many Easter eggs. The reward to Last Night on Earth is literally, if you've been reading Batman since the New 52, and even more so if you've read Batman for longer than that, boy, there's so many rewards here. I mean, everything from Snyder, from Batman, Bruce Wayne in the institution that he's in, waking up and at one point pulling a small dinosaur and a penny out of the wall.
So good. It's
And
so good.
all the little players and the nurses and the people in the sort of asylum that are playing the roles of his villains, and and Snyder is so subtle about it. And if you have a knowledge, just even a little bit of a working knowledge of Batman's rogues galleries, you can really appreciate all the references. And it's just really, really well done.
Oh.
And it's subtle, and the characterizations and the dialogue, they're just really spot on.
Can we just, because you know me, I am a cynic for dialogue. And Scott Snyder, in the early bits of his Justice League and in Dark Knight's Metal, we've talked about many times how I think he's come up short in dialogue. It is no clue that at some point our Cape Crusader runs around with the disembodied head of the Joker.
Mm.
And that dialogue, I went into this expecting really clunky dialogue, especially again after reading Metal, after reading, Scott Snyder's Justice League, which I think still up until this point can have some clunky dialogue. I think that's one of the biggest problems that is perpetuated throughout his run. And I think that like Batman: Last Night on Earth is a near perfect comic book. I think it is near perfect. And it is everything I wanted out of Metal and more. We do have some guys in the chat saying, some Okie dude saying he's only read one issue of Damned. Yeah, I mean, fortunately, they're giving you time to catch up, so I don't think you'll have very much of a problem with that.
Take your time.
Yeah, take your time, my friend. I don't think, like I said, issue 3 comes out, I think, at the end of this month, so you got a month to read book 2, and I don't think it'll take you a month, my friend. Daryl Ellisor, despite all the mess around Black Label, so far these books have been amazing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed the first issue of Batman Damned. I think issue 2 was good. I don't think issue 2 was amazing. Obviously, I'm freaking foaming at the mouth for Last Night on Earth, and I'm absolutely into it. But I think Black Label has had some strong books. I think looking at its track record is going to be on a pivot point pretty much up until Batman Damned closes out, the story.
Yeah. One great thing about what's evident about Last Night on Earth with Snyder is it shows a continual improvement in his dialogue. His Justice League has improved dramatically in the last 25 issues. It's gotten much better.
Oh, absolutely.
It's gotten a little bit better explaining the story, the dial. He's just really gotten better. It's really come into his own because he struggled a bit. I thought James Tiny in the fourth fortunately helped him along, I think, with some of the writing, and I think he's really improved on it, and he's actually listened to criticism, Scott Snyder, on his Justice League run, and I think it actually made for a better you could see some of the improvements in Batman Last Night on Earth,
Oh my God.
and it's much better because even if I read the first arc of Batman Court of Owls again, and Court of Owls had some, if I'm fair, if I'm being brutally honest, it had some clunky dialogue too, I thought, and
Yeah.
I think it's but he's you can definitely see the improvement of him as a writer, and it really really shows.
Yeah, I mean, going into Last Night on Earth, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit skeptical because, for Snyder, I hadn't for a while really read anything from him that I loved. All Star Batman was all right. Like, I wasn't in love with it. I for a very long time, I think up until maybe issue 13 or 14, I straight up did not like his Justice League and have grown to like it. I think this last arc has been an awesome read for sure. And this most recent issue, number 25, was phenomenal. Excellent stuff. So I think, this especially kind of having that really wild tonality in terms of, or no, not even in terms of a really wild tonality in the same vein as metal. I was scared that we were going to be getting a little bit of that crazy out there, a little bit too much to handle dialogue and character interaction. But we didn't get that. I think that every interaction that Snyder writes in Batman Last Night on Earth is solid. It feels like real people talking, and it feels like the characters that we've grown to love throughout his Batman run and throughout DC Comics as a whole in general. Um, let's see in the comments, Samoki Dude says he didn't really have an issue with dialogue, neither did Daryl Ellisor. Um, I think there were some pretty big dialogue problems in Dark Knight's Metal, and the beginning of his Justice League run. I know Boom and I have talked about that, especially in like the earlier stages of my channel, quite a bit on discussions. But I think Boom and I would also come to agree that, especially in his Justice League, his dialogue ended up being proof that he didn't quite know all the characters in the Justice League cast. Am I right? Or would you disagree?
Well, I think he was sort of uh, I think that's part of it. And by the way, I still think he's trying to find a voice for Wonder Woman and a little bit of a voice for Green Lantern and Flash, and I think that's improving. He very clearly writes Batman the best. He's put a lot of emphasis on Superman and Batman, drawing between the dichotomy of Batman and Superman and how important they are to the multiverse.
Right.
If there is a fault though, and this might be considered a minor nitpick. I love Justice League 25, but I do think that I would have liked to have seen the Justice League focus on the importance of the Big Seven, or at a minimum, the Trinity, or like, because you got the Big Seven making up the Justice League. The pillars of the DC universe should be the Trinity: Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And as important as the Batman and Superman are into the DC universe, where's Wonder Woman? Where's her importance in Justice League 25?
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised, and I don't like pushing politics and comic books, but I'm actually surprised there's not more criticism of the fact that Wonder Woman has taken second fiddle in the Justice League, uh, and I think I think she should have more of a paramount role on at least alongside Batman and Superman, and that hasn't been the case. And
Well,
it's a
yeah.
it's a minor little nitpick. It's actually going to be part of one of my future rants, but I'll be a little more harsh in the future. But I actually asked Scott Snyder on Twitter. I asked him, "What's the future for Wonder Woman?" Because he's great at Superman, he's great at Batman. Well, what about the Trinity? What about Wonder Woman?
Yeah. Well, as far as I understand, each one of the Justice League arcs have been character highlights, right? Like, let's be real, issues, I think 13 through 15, where we went to Thanagar Prime, had almost nothing to do with Batman and Superman. I just think it's, to me, I'm interpreting this as it's standing out to you because this was by far the best arc of his Justice League run so far. It was the most cohesive. The story tied in really nicely. The characterization, I think, was by far his best, generally looking at the cast. Because frankly, I think in the beginning of his in the beginning of his Justice League, I was not a fan of the way he was characterizing Batman. It just felt like cheap one-liners that, like, it's funny because Batman's kind of like the rigid guy. So the cheap one-liners got to mean more. And I still will say that I don't think he knows Barry Allen. I don't think he knows how to write Barry Allen at all. I think he has some sort of grip on pretty much the rest of the cast.
Yeah.
This arc has definitely been redeeming in terms of the way that he's been characterizing his Batman in Justice League. Loved Superman. Loved the way he handled Superman in this arc, and made me begin to, like, ask DC for a Scott Snyder Superman book, because I think it would be astounding when it's not under the pretense of the New 52 Superman. So it's been good. I don't want to go much more into his Justice League because
Well, I'm going to go a little bit more into it. I have to, because I feel compelled to make the comment that his Batman in Justice League is more hopeful, and dare I say, almost appeared happy when Superman won the day, and more happy and hopeful than Batman has been through 72 issues of Tom King's Batman.
No,
And I'll
I
just leave it
agree.
at that.
I agree, and like I said, in that last statement, in that I think that his characterization of Batman in this previous arc was spot on. I thought it was great. But I think, like, looking at the earlier arcs, you have to admit it was camp. Like, he was just throwing some straight campy Batman dialogue in our face, which is obviously a big indicator on characterization.
But he was having fun. He was trying to have fun with Batman, and I think that's encapsulated in many ways by Batman's, the fact Batman and Jarro, how Batman and Jarro, their dialogue back and forth. They had some really good moments there. And it was good to see Batman have that sense of humor and develop a sense of humor in a team dynamic, because Batman is different than with the Justice League than he is with the Outsiders. He's always so serious with the Outsiders because it's more
Right.
espionage, more intelligence based, whereas Justice League is more a little bit, it can be campy, it can be more fun, it can be more epic.
Yeah,
And
no,
Batman is, and he's more personal with the Bat family, and he's always more introverted and personal with the Bat family and Damian. And Damian is more of a stern father figure who lacks a sense of humor. With Justice League, Batman seems to open up more, and I think that's what I like about Snyder, because Batman is among equals when he's in the Justice League, and I think he's amongst the world's best that are on par with him in terms of crime fighters. And so I think for that reason, he could maybe relax a little bit more, or for whatever reason, his character is a little bit different. And I like the way Snyder is getting comfortable writing Batman in that team dynamic.
no, I think as a general statement, I agree with what you're saying. I think that any character really under different contexts is going to behave differently, right? We're going to get slightly different models of that character. But I think there's also, taking into account the degrees at which we are varying the character. Like I said, I think that he's done a stellar job with Batman in his last arc. But I remember reading the first arc, maybe first two arcs of his Justice League, and thinking, like, did you forget how to write Batman? It was just that far off. And I think just it seems like, based on this last arc, that he's found a balance between the Batman that he was writing in Gotham City and the Batman that goes on these crazy spacefaring adventures with the Justice League. Because again, I 100% agree with you. I think being under that different context with his peers, he's going to behave differently. And I love the Jarro dynamic. I think it's absolutely charming. I think it's really funny. But again, I think it's just really taking into account how much we're going to vary the ways we're going to be characterizing Batman throughout the books. The degrees to which we're going to be doing that, I think is something to take into account. But like I said, at the end of the day, I think his most recent arc was very strong all around, from story to characterization to dialogue to art, everything. I did want to get through some of these guys in the live chat. Samoki does this shit. They said it was coming around in March. I don't quite know what you're talking about. Coming around in March. No, DeConic's Wonder Woman did not come out yet. Like we said earlier on in this episode, the only books that have come out yet were Batman Damned 1 and 2 and Batman Last Night on Earth Book 1. So we haven't gotten much. That was
But there's also, we should add that White Knight was retroactively placed in the Black Label category. right?
Yeah, but like so was All-Star Superman and Dark Knight Returns and all that other stuff. So I really wouldn't count that. Up until we get like original content under the label, because I feel like saying, oh, we're getting All-Star Superman and Black Label. Great. Is it any different from All-Star Superman when it was not under Black Label? Not really.
Yeah.
So I think I consider that a bit of a cop out. Um, Let's see. Daryl Ellisor says he heard that on a podcast that DC got a new boss the day Damned shipped. The Battlewing spooked them. Yeah, I heard about some big editorial changes around that time, but I think taking that stuff with a grain of salt would have been a little bit more suited for DC at the time, especially in terms of the public relations with the fans. Um, some Okie dude says his issue with Scott Snyder's Justice League is the preachiness in his monologues, if you get what I mean, but it happens a lot more with his writing. He's Alan Mooring, if that makes sense. Um, I think they've gotten better. I think they've gotten more concise over the course of Scott Snyder's Batman run. I think there were times in the first arc, especially, where he's explaining all of the cosmic phenomena, and I'm kind of like, I'm bored to death. And then he starts going off at breakneck pace with story, and I have no idea what the hell's going on, and I was
Well,
disoriented.
I when the phrase Alan Mooring, Scott Snyder exploring, Alan Mooring a little bit, I agree with that, and I actually like that. What I like about Scott Snyder's Justice League, and it was perfectly encapsulated in Justice League 25, is that it brought on the goosebumps. You felt the epic nature that these are more than characters. Superman is more. He's more than the sum of his parts. He's more than a character. He really is. He's not only an idea, but he's a faith. He's beyond belief. He's a knowing. There's something about Superman that even Batman can't deny. That Batman even overcame his logic. Logically, Batman knew that the World Forger was right, that the universe had to die. But Superman, he gave Superman a chance that if Superman could make it, then it would restore his faith, and they would give it another shot. And I just love that. And it might be a little bit campy and corny by one interpretation, to use your words, but it works, and it worked for me, and I just love it. And the art, and I can't emphasize the art enough. Jorge Jimenez, man, that one. I mean, it's been all over Twitter, all over social media. That one page spread with, the three generations of, Jonathan Kent, Superman, and his son John Kent. The young John Kent, I would emphasize, looks amazing. And if that isn't a testament to bring young John Kent back, I don't know what is.
I feel like the words of literally every single fan that's read a John Kent comic book should have been testament enough, but I 100%
Yeah.
agree with you on that. Yeah, no, I thought 25 was phenomenal. By far the best issue in his entire Justice League run, by leaps and bounds. And I think, again, this art finished super, super strong. Let's see, in the comments. Daryl Ellisor asked, what do you guys think of the Batman Who Laughs? I'm gonna choose not to go too far in depth, Daryl. I appreciate you asking our opinions, but we do tend to get off topic a little bit on our via our own methods, and unfortunately, Batman. The Batman Who Laughs is not Black Label, so I want to try to keep things a little bit more concise to implications with Black Label.
But well, you can give a one-shot review. I mean, I'll answer real quick. Batman Who Laughs, I think, is great. I mean, Scott Snyder right now is on a high. He's hitting it out of the park. He's Justice League felt inspiring, and the Batman Who Laughs, I'm looking forward to. I mean, Batman Who Laughs is so popular. Batman Who Laughs is getting his own series. I mean, and there's a reason for that, and it's branching off. That the Batman Who Laughs with the sideline, with all those characters, the Batman Who Laughs has created a toxin that 6 other DC heroes are going to be infected with to explore their darker side. We don't know who those 6 heroes are. That's part of the mystery that was teased in Year of the Villain. This is fantastic. I mean, between Batman, Last Night on Earth, it might come out once every 2 months. But we've got Year of the Villain. We got Batman Who Laughs coming out. We got Justice League firing on all cylinders. We got Doomsday Clock, despite delays. Every time we all complain about delays, every issue of Doomsday Clock seems to be better than the previous issue of Doomsday Clock. I don't know, man. But for maybe a little editorial blunder with DC Black Label, I think times are I still say we're headed toward kind of a rebirth, a revitalization of possibly even a rebirth, a rebirthing of a rebirth for DC. I'm very excited now, and I know I'm kind of like the wind. I flip flop like crazy month to month, but you just happen to catch me on a high. I'm quite excited for DC right now.
No, I mean it's infectious. I think hearing you talk about it gets me excited for DC's future, because I know I've also been a little bit towing on the negative end for DC lately, just with various decisions made with Black Label and standard publishing, so on and so forth. But I 100% hope that you're right. I do want a new renaissance for DC, and I hope that they make the right decision in trying to get Jeff Johns to come back and take a little bit more leadership in what we're going to be establishing in the DCU, because I think very clearly the Rebirth era is the strongest thing DC has seen in 20 plus years as a whole.
Yeah.
Just almost their entire publishing line was solid at a bi-monthly pace as well. And so I don't think that's anything to scoff at by any means.
Yeah.
When Rebirth came out, I started reading an innumerable amount of books that I had never considered reading. Let's be real, I didn't care about Superman going into Rebirth. And I walked out of Tomasi doing his thing on Superman and Jurgens doing his thing on Action Comics, becoming a lifelong fan of the character. So I think that if DC can pull something like that back into the limelight, get Black Label going, get their main universe publishing in line, I think that, yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I hope you're right. I 100% hope you're right.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jeff Johns. I want to give a shout out to Shazam, because it's a comic book that issue 6 came out this week. I don't think it's getting as much love as it deserves. It is a phenomenal comic. The only reason I don't review it is that I simply don't have time. I just don't have time. That's the bottom line. I'm a busy guy. We all have lives, but I love it, and I think it's honestly that's the highlights of between Shazam, Doomsday Clock. Despite the names, Doomsday Clock is riddled with rebirth and hope. It just is. Justice League 25. Things are really looking good here. Heck, even the Batman Who Laughs seems to have an aura of hope in it, because you see Batman slowly overcoming the toxin that's turning him into the Batman Who Laughs. I mean, there's hope here if you choose to find it and if you choose to look for it. And so I'm really hoping that this doubt that I had for DC, because I've been pretty hard on DC, and that you and I both have, we've complained about where's the rebirth. I think maybe it's there, and it's going to creep up on us. And I think it's creeping up on us. And, I hope I'm just not filled with cognitive dissonance and I have confirmation bias, but I hope it's, I hope I'm right on that.
Yeah.
And that it's not wishful thinking.
And two, I think we've talked a lot about what we've seen, which isn't much, from DC Black Label. Going into the future, what do you want to see? Because I know one of the things that I really would like is diversity in the Black Label books coming out, because as much as, obviously I like Batman just as much as the next guy, but we get a Batman Joker story, then another Batman Joker story, then another Batman Joker story. Like, dude, give me one of those 2 Wonder Woman books. Give me Superman Year One. Because we got plenty of Batman Joker things coming down the pipeline. I mean, Batman Damned, Batman Last Night on Earth, Batman Curse of the White Knight, whatever that Harley Quinn thing is, the supposed Batman Joker book by how did I lose it? Silvestri, which mind you isn't even slated anymore. Yeah. They came out with promo art when they announced it. Is not even slated anymore. I would like to see them keep a solid rotation of characters and keeping things fresh.
I just want to be clear, Dark Knight, when you say diversity, do you mean like diversity in terms of the cast of characters, or diversity in the more political sense?
No, not in the political sense. In the cast of characters, strictly, I like my Batman Joker stuff just as much as the next guy, but I don't want an entire, it's not DC Batman label. It's DC Black Label. I want to see more characters. I want to see more stories, because I think it opens up more dimensions to play with, different landscapes, different plots, different narratives for us to follow along with. So again, as versatile as Batman is, I would just like to see more out of the line than just Batman.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're getting a little bit of that, but I do think though that if I understand your comment on diversity, I think DC is gonna stick to the big guns for now. We're not gonna get a great deal of it. I mean, look, we have, to me, Rucka on Wonder Woman and DeConnick on Wonder Woman. That's not particular diversity. Those are big name writers on a well-known, well-established character. Rucka's already written Wonder Woman. DeConnick has wrote Bitch Planet. She's on Aquaman. I thought she's done a really good job on both those things. Frank Miller doing Superman, the same Superman that's in Batman Dark Knight, which, by the way, I'm so looking forward to that. To have a Superman year one as defined by Frank Miller. I can't tell you how much I want to see that. I'm actually hoping for a little bit of, I'm hoping for a Superman written with classic 80s Miller chauvinism, male chauvinism. I probably won't get that, but I'm hoping for that. I kind of like the old style Miller, with the Superman screwing up media. I'd like to see how Frank Miller interprets Clark Kent meeting Lois Lane for the first time. Somehow I don't view that as a politically correct altercation.
How do you feel about him getting a sidekick with a pink and green Superman symbol on each of her ass cheeks?
Hey man, I got no problem with that. Yeah, I don't know if he draws that, or if John Romita Jr. draws that. I just hope they don't block it out like they did the Batwing.
Listen, right? I mean, for me, and it's for me when I say diversity again, because I know there's so much that around that word. It's not even like the diversity in the creative teams. I just want a diversity in tonalities, a diversity in character representation. It could be the big three, but adding 2 more characters to focalize these big creative stories around other than Batman, I think add a lot, especially when the way they're looking to do this is have it on, have these books on rotation. Because, I obviously love my Batman stuff, but I think that this line wasn't just created for Batman, and I would love to see these really interesting takes on the character. I'm really excited for pretty much every book that's going to be coming out besides that stupid Joker Harley book. And maybe I'll eat my words. I hope I do, because I'm going to give every single one of these books a chance. No questions asked. And I think that just from talking to you, it makes me a little bit more hopeful that maybe DC is getting all their eggs in a basket and deciding, what they're going to be doing moving forward. And I hope that it goes without near as many hitches as it has been from its initiation up until now. I think that the idea of Black Label is really, really strong. I think that it just provides a really fresh, new context for big name creators and even some independent creators just come and make their mark on iconic characters, which is awesome, it's all I could ever ask for as a comic book fan, really, as long as it's executed well. So, moving.
I'm going to say that there's 2 Black Label titles that I'm a little worried about. I don't think I'm going to enjoy. I think they're going to be critically acclaimed, but I don't think I'm going to like them as much as the critics will. I don't think Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman is going to be all that exciting.
Saw that coming.
He's too Vanilla Sky. He reveres the character too much, and she's boring under his pen. She's just plain boring. And I really hope I'm wrong, but I doubt it. DeConnick's Wonder Woman is a little bit of a wild card. DeConnick can really write some good stuff, and she surprised me at times. I love her Bitch Planet. It's really good. Her Aquaman was not bad. I'm looking forward more to DeConnick's Wonder Woman because of the artist. You mentioned the artist.
Phil Jimenez.
Right, Phil Jimenez. He's amazing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Some of the layouts that he teased on Twitter look amazing. And so I think it's going to be a visual feast. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to that artistically. So DeConnick, I think, is a wild card. I'll be interested to see what she brings to the table. But in my view, I'm waiting for the day. And just a quick comment, I'm waiting for the day. Wonder Woman Black Label. We need emphasis on the warrior, less on the peace, on the peaceful warrior of Wonder Woman. We need a little bit more aggression. We need a little bit someone who's going to kick some ass, and take the names of gods and start, holding the gods accountable. And I've said this before in my rants, but when a writer finally decides to do that, provided the editors will let him, you're gonna see literally a continental shift in the writing of Wonder Woman because people will respond to it.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna say I told you so when it happens, but
no,
because it's gonna happen.
I think you have a really valid opinion when it comes to Wonder Woman. I am still very much game for his Wonder Woman. I know that you are very much in the Brian Azzarello Wonder Woman camp over Greg Rucka, just because of the sheer difference in tonality, characterization, so on and so forth. And I actually enjoy both for very different reasons, clearly, because they have almost nothing in common besides the fact that they are Wonder Woman titles. Um, I mean, like, honestly, the thing I'm least excited for might be Superman Year One, just because it's Frank Miller, like, who hasn't written anything good in a
Yeah,
while, and John Romita Jr., who, I will give credit where credit's due. These preview pages look like they're going to be some of the best of his career, but just
yeah,
generally speaking, I don't think his style lends very well to Superman.
yeah.
I think it is very much a monster or I think it is very much, yeah, it is very much like the Frankenstein's monster version of comic book art. I think it does well with big gritty characters like the Punisher, like a Spider-Man who doesn't have a face.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, and again, I hope I eat my words. When it comes to deeply personal character interactions, he has a really hard time making characters A, look different from one another, but B,
Yeah.
emote, which I think Superman, out of pretty much any mainline DC character, thrives most on character to character interactions and emoting, because Superman's main driving force is hope, right? How do you see hope? In the facial expressions of the people he saves, maybe even in the people that he's trying to stop. Watching the response to really Superman throughout the whatever the writer is going to be crafting with the artist. So
I
I think,
I I share your sentiment with Superman 100% with Frank Miller's Superman and John Romita's Jr. art. In fact, I maintain that when Jeff Johns last wrote Superman, John Romita Jr. was the artist, and I think it suffered greatly. I think John's writing suffered as a result of the bad art, to be very blunt about it.
yeah.
And so I share your concerns about it. I'm more optimistic about Frank Miller's writing because Frank Miller has had his story that he's wanted to tell on Superman going right back to the Dark Knight Returns. The timing though has never been right for him to tell it, but
Yeah.
he's always had a particular, very strong vision of Superman. He's just never really had an opportunity to tell it. But we got shades of it in Dark Knight 3, The Master Race, and I really enjoyed The Master Race. I particularly enjoyed Wonder Woman in The Master Race as well. I really love that series, and I got the slipcase edition. It's fantastic. I love it. And so if this Superman has shades of that, and it is John Romita Jr.'s best work of his career that we can tell by the preview pages anyway. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna support the book. I'm gonna give it a fair shot. I think for someone who is, as myself, who is known amongst my peers at least as someone who's not afraid to really ream a book for poor craftsmanship, I have also given a lot of creators who you could say I might have like a reader's beef with opportunities. Like I think I was one of the first in our little group of people to really ream Bendis' Superman hard. Did I give Young Justice a chance? Yeah. Did I like issue 1? Yeah. Was everything else steaming garbage? Yeah. But you know what? I gave issue 1 a chance. I did like it. I didn't let, anything outside of what I was reading right there impact my opinion of the quality of the writing. So I'm going to give everything a fair chance. I think the one of the things I'm most upset about is the loss of a release date for that other history of DC Universe. I thought that was a really interesting idea, looking at the history of the DC Universe through minority characters, because
Yeah.
I just think it's such a unique lens to look at the landscape of DC, because there are a lot of really strong minority characters throughout DC Comics continuity and history that just don't get the limelight that they deserve. Like, Black Lightning is always been a character that I've been extremely interested in the concept of, but could never
Yeah.
really get into because we hadn't gotten a lot past, like, let's be real, fairly mediocre writing by Tony Isabella.
Yeah.
So he's a character with a lot of great ideas behind him and a lot of really great story potential. And
I
thankfully, because of the Outsiders book, it seems like we're going to be getting some of that. But it's very unique perspectives on the I guess history and continuity of the DC universe that I am excited about. So I am a little bit disappointed that that's been taken off the schedule because again, I think it's a really, really unique idea for a book. I think it has a lot of potential. And yeah, really, that's all I have to say about that.
well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I think it was a good business decision not to print that. And I emphasize good business decision. As someone who enjoys a good story, I agree with you. It would be something that I would love to read. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm going to take a pot shot against all of us in the comic book community. Uh, that is, in the midst of this, we're still in the middle of a comic book culture war, and the maturity level of the collective comic book community on anything remotely political in comic books is just childish, and it's just not worth it. And if I was DC, it's not worth the headache. It's just not worth the goddamn headache. Pardon my language,
Mm.
because it's just ridiculous. I mean, you get people out there. I mean, I still laugh at the number of people that still can't get over Captain Marvel. I mean, put it to rest already. I
Mm.
mean, the politics and the comic book culture war on this stuff, and the politics that people will choose to see politics where it just doesn't exist.
But
I mean, it just blows me away. And you know what? It's not worth the headache. If DC has a choice, if they've got 12 different comics to choose from, and one of them's remotely political, I don't blame them at all for saying, you know what? Put that one on the side burner for now. Let's wait till after 2020 when Trump's gone and we don't have to deal with that crap, and maybe the comic book culture wars died down a little bit. I think that's a factor in these decision makings, and I absolutely see it a factor in Marvel, because you notice over in Marvel, they're just throwing titles out there, and the amount of politics over at Marvel has gone down dramatically since 2017. I don't mean to digress. I don't mean to side turn this, but
no, no,
I
no.
think that it's related to the Black Label topic, because
Absolutely.
Black Label is about it's related to alternate topics. It's related to diversity of topics, diversity of characters, tone, and you can't avoid politics at some point, and you can't avoid social change and what have you. And quite frankly, what goes on behind the scenes, the reason why the Batwang was taken out was, you better believe it was because of politics. That was absolutely
Yeah,
because of some ideology. It was.
yeah,
Bottom
no,
line is,
I agree with you,
and
but
sorry, go ahead.
in regards to this other history book, does that mean we can't get books with minority lead characters? I think no matter what you do, you're going to get backlash from some group of people, and especially when it has to do with representation in comic books. That's a big issue that I think there are valid arguments on both sides. 100%, as there is with pretty much any other topic out there in the universe. But I think that, like, just because it has a potential to ruffle some feathers, I don't think it means that you should be stifling creative voices like that. And I don't think that, you know, there's going to be something inherently political about that other history of the DC universe, because I feel like it's gonna be a little bit evocative of like the Spider-Man like life story thing that we're getting throughout the decades, because
Yeah,
obviously there is a very unique perspective, just to focalize it, for example, of the African American community in comic books and the African American characters and how they're represented, and how various changes in our society have impacted the way they've been written. And I think that that book could be, and again, we don't know anything about it besides the title and the premise. I think
yeah,
it had a very unique idea and a very unique perspective at approaching the DC universe. And I think that I see where you're going, but I think that just because we know it'll ruffle feathers, it doesn't mean we should stifle that
right.
that project.
I never said that. I never actually said that. I said that's why I think DC is not publishing it now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
DC's making that decision. I'm not saying they should. I'm saying that's the reason they are, and
No, yeah.
I believe that. And
My
I think,
my apologies. I misworded myself.
yeah, no,
Um,
I think DC's conservative, and that's what they're doing. But DC's doing something that's much wiser, in my opinion, and that is they're publishing Batman and the Outsiders. Give it to Brian Hill. You got minority characters in Batman on the Outsiders. Let him explore those things there. He's doing so. He's doing great in Vertigo's American Carnage. So
absolutely.
DC does have diversity. DC is exploring, those types of issues, and they're, albeit, Vertigo doesn't sell very well. It's being canceled, but it is there. And but it's right now, it's so competitive right now. And I got to tell you, if with DC's conservatism, they're going to play it safe because they're focusing now on their bigger titles. They're publishing fewer titles. And I'm going to say this again. I know I said it before the live stream started, but I'll say it for those listening, Dark Knight, that, sales data has shown DC is publishing fewer titles now. Only 60 titles they published last month, compared to Marvel's 119 titles.
Mm-hmm.
They're selling. They're making just as much money as Marvel in terms of dollar share, pretty close to it, unit share, and they're focusing on the more popular titles now. And the titles that are going to suffer are the more obscure characters. So whether we like it or not, that's going to mean that the opportunities for perhaps more diversity of characters, or dare I say, literally different ethnic characters, it might be more of a challenge at DC because of their priorities as a publisher. And they're focusing more on books and graphic novels and less so on the periodicals, on the monthly comic books. So factoring that in as well, I don't know if it that I think probably the book that you referred to, Dark Knight, maybe that, I don't even know if that'll ever come. That might be on the chopping block.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope it's not, because again, like I've spoken my interests regarding the book a couple times already, and I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying about the divisive nature of the comic book community, especially around anything remotely political. I get it. And I wish we got a little bit more, because it really does get a little bit tiring. It just is, and that's coming from a guy who has Batman tattoos. I get tired of just seeing Batman, 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 because I think it also makes the character a little bit more stale. I would rather read one great Batman book a month than read three mediocre ones. And I'm not saying that's at all the case right now, but just generally speaking, I get it. The character sells. You got to make business decisions. But I think that books like the other history of the DC universe, amongst other books that have been pitched throughout, the I guess the existence of the Black Label line, were unique and interesting, and just something to cleanse the palate from what we traditionally read. But again, at the end of the day, I understand where you're coming from. I think your perspective is unique, looking at the current landscape of the community, and it does make sense.
Yeah.
All in all.
I don't know if I have a unique perspective looking at the community. I think a lot of people agree with me, and naturally I sound egotistical saying that, and somewhat ethnocentric. But there's a reason why I don't comment on the comic culture war, and I don't.
You there, Boom? I think we lost you. Yeah, we
Yeah,
lost
sorry
you.
about that. My phone rang. It's okay. But anyways, there's a reason why I don't comment on. I generally stay away from the SJW and Comicsgate. Is that it actually makes. Sorry, somebody keeps trying to contact me. It makes me kind of angry. So I just try to stay out of it because I end up getting opinionated, and I don't mind ranting and raving, but I don't like getting angry.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that. That's why I tend not to give my opinions on what's going on with all of that stuff. I know we got a Samoki Dude and Daryl talking about it a little bit in the chat. I prefer not to talk about it nearly as much until it comes knocking on my front door, in which case I'll present my arguments very strongly. But until then, I try to stay away from it. It's toxic, and frankly, I don't want anything like that to come near my experience being in the comic book community, because it's something that I cherish.
Yeah.
So if like you, if I can kind of keep my thoughts around that out of it and just enjoy the books, I will. Some Okie Dude asked, what happened to American Carnage? Well, it does what comic book does. It's being published, and it's a great book so far. Honestly, and it's an awesome. I don't know if that was, I guess, the answer to what happened to American Carnage, because it's still happening, but it's very good. It's honestly one of my favorite books that I've been keeping up with, and it's one of the books where when I sat down to catch back up on my monthly reading, it was one of the first books that I sat down to hit, because it is, I think it is absolutely masterful writing. I think it is the best thing I've ever read from Brian Edward Hill, to be 100% honest with you. And I think the really interesting part about the way he's dealing with the sociological and political issues in that book are kind of bipartisan. I think if you really absorb it, he's finding flaws on both sides of the political aisle, and he's not exploiting them. He's just discussing them and finding ways to bring about some sort of dialogue between these two very hostile and hostile groups of people.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to the art. I really like the art, the cover art for American Carnage. The art is just really, it's excellent.
Yeah, I think it's Ian Churchill.
Yeah, the artist is Leandro Fernandez on issue 5, and actually no, it's Leandro Fernandez.
Yeah, Leandro Fernandez does the B covers and the internals. It's something Churchill. I think it's Ian Churchill does the main covers.
Okay, I don't. I'm trying to find a page here that they never put the credits on the front page anymore, and it's never on the back page. And
it's usually towards the back for American Carnage.
Can't find it.
But while you're,
why they don't.
Well, I was gonna say, while you're looking, Samoki Dude says, well, with what you were saying, I was afraid that it got canceled and moved to Image or something. No, it fingers crossed that this book is going to be allowed to finish as is, and as a Vertigo title, or at least through DC, because I've really been enjoying the book, and I hope that, it can avoid a little bit of that controversy from impacting the read of the story. He says, also, it sucks about Vertigo. He knew it was going to happen with all the mediocre effort being put into the revitalization, but he will still always love it. Rest in peace. I think there's part of me that was definitely very somber, at receiving the news about Vertigo. But let's be real. How many times has Vertigo gone and come back? Comic books are such a cyclical industry above all else. So yes, it is. I am genuinely sad that Vertigo is being canceled, because it does have some really solid books. I think Books of Magic has been good. I think The Dreaming's been all right. I think American Carnage has been great. And I think that it has a lot of potential.
It is Leandro Fernandez does the art for all the issues.
Mm-hmm.
And Dean White. I don't know. I think when you said Churchill, there's no Churchill on the title. I think you just confused it with something else.
I thought he did the covers, because I know Fernandez definitely doesn't do the main cover.
Ben Oliver does the covers.
Ben Oliver. I don't know where the hell
Oliver
from.
I just read every single one, and Ben Oliver has done all of the covers. But there's only one cover. There's no alternate cover, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, Samoki Dude brings up he says that they should just move the Sandman work to DC. I'm gonna disagree. I don't quite think that the Sandman stuff has a place in the mainline DC universe. I hope that they come up with some sort of alternative. And again, let's take this with a grain of salt. It is a rumor. None of this is 100% confirmed yet. So as likely as it might be, and with all the buzz it's been getting, we cannot take it for 100% certain, because as any industry of entertainment will lead to, or will kind of show throughout its history, things are not so cut and dry. So I hope that the Sandman universe books get to live on. I hope that we get to see more around the Sandman universe in general. And who knows? Maybe Vertigo doesn't get canceled, but I don't think
Well,
it.
well, it's also worth noting that Sandman's always been at Vertigo. Really,
Mhm.
Sandman is pretty much, other than the 1970s there during the DC implosion. Sandman, you know, it's always been at Vertigo. So I think that if people who love Sandman are getting Sandman, it doesn't matter who's publishing it, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a freaking Sandman tattoo, so I'm all for it, man. But and I hope it stays alive. I think it's a really precarious situation with the potential of Vertigo being axed, because I don't think the Sandman universe books survive if Vertigo is axed in general. So we'll see where it goes. I honestly I don't really have a prediction for what's moving forward, because again we don't know whether or not Vertigo's cancellation is set in stone. Um, but we've given a general talk about what how we think things have been going thus far for the DC Black Label. I know I've talked a little bit more about what I'm expecting from the future. What are some things you would like to see maybe improved upon or even continued throughout the remainder of DC Black Label's time in publishing?
Well, when you say just to hold you accountable for your words, the remainder of Black Label's time in publishing, I hope it, I hope it has lots of time in publishing. I hope it becomes. I would not lose sleep at all if Vertigo was replaced by Black Label. I think that if Vertigo goes the way of the dodo bird and we got Black Label, that's fantastic. I got nothing. I see nothing wrong with that. Some of the I like what I see coming out of Black Label. I would like to see Black Label being, my personal preference is I would like it to be, to gain the reputation of being a sophisticated adult Elseworlds line.
Agreed.
Because, I don't, for the life of me, I don't understand why DC just doesn't bring the Elseworlds line back. I
Yeah.
don't know why they just don't have an Elseworlds line. Call it Elseworlds.
Yeah.
I I mean, if you look at their greatest successes over the last 30 years, I mean, Gotham by Gaslight, Red Sun. I mean, there's a whole
Kingdom Come.
slew of them. They're all Elseworlds tales,
Yeah.
and those are classic comic books. And
Yeah.
every comic book retailer has them on the shelves, and they keep ordering them. You look at the top 300 every month; they're all classic Elseworlds DC tales. Why don't you bring DC Elseworlds back? I don't understand that. I
Yeah.
mean, you even got the name. You don't even need to get a name. You've already trademarked the name. I don't understand why DC doesn't do that. But look, if they're not going to do that for whatever reason, okay, fine. But then put it into Black Labels. Have a Black Label Elseworlds line, and like you said, that would incorporate your opinion, which I agree with. Do something different. Have a different Green Lantern tale, or a different take on any character. Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, some wild, crazy, like diversity, to use your term. I mean, yeah, definitely do that. But I would view it. I don't care what you call it, Black Label or what have you. But to me, I think of Elseworlds. That's what it is. You take characters that you know and love, and you give them a little bit of a twist,
Yeah.
and you say, take a character that you love, but they have this little quirk or that flaw, or they're a little bit darker than in the past, and then go with it. That
Yeah.
to me is sort of a Black Label. It's an Elseworlds. That's the twist they should have.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Black Label pretty much should represent all the things that they had sold us on when they first announced it. I think it should be DC's top shelf. It should be the stories that are finally aged and matured and ready for a little bit more high concept storytelling. Really, because that's what I look for in DC Black Label, and we have gotten some of that. Like I said, admittedly, there's some really, really great high art storytelling in Batman Damned, and I, will say this now as I have been throughout. I think that Batman Last Night on Earth book 1 has the potential to be Scott Snyder's magnum opus. I will put that out there right now. I think it has the potential. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's great. And I would love continue to see more of that. And I think that that's what Black Label should be. Exactly what you're talking about. I think that it really depends on where you're going to toe the line between Black Label and Elseworlds too, because I think the general comic book reader might get confused, which is a big thing that a lot of these big companies try to avoid, is confusion, even though they end up creating more of it, ironically. But I mean, I like your idea 100%. I think that we should still have an Elseworlds banner, and I think that the Black Label should just represent a little bit more high art storytelling with a little bit more mature beats within it.
Yeah.
Um,
But
because
remember, Dark Knight, though, to build on your earlier point, by any metric, you take the Elseworld sagas of Red Sun, Gotham by Gaslight, for example, those could easily be Black Label titles given their subject matter and their adult content.
yeah,
Absolutely,
I mean,
they absolutely could.
well, I mean,
And
they're already roping in a lot of those books, like you brought up
there you
before,
go.
All Star Superman. I think Dark Knight Returns is also, getting added to the label. The first White Knight, although not super far gone to the past, but still a put.
I think a missed opportunity was uh, Robert Venditti's Freedom Fighters. In my view, should have been a Black Label title. The recent issue of Freedom Fighters has the return, or the tease the return of the Overman, who's the Nazi Superman.
Mhm.
And I think given that subject matter of how Overman wasn't aware of the Holocaust, he became aware of the Holocaust in Grant Morrison's Multiversity. Overgirl died, she was killed. He left Earth X in dismay, only to return. How does a Nazi Superman find redemption? To
Mm.
me, that has Black Label written all over it.
Yeah.
And that's potentially where Robert Venditti might be going. He's already on issue 5 of Freedom Fighters. To me, that just cried out for a Black Label. To me, that's adult content that he should be allowed to explore darker themes in a story like that. But I don't think it's going to necessarily be that way with Robert Venditti. And
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that to me, that's to be able to have that flexibility for you. You get a writer who's got some ideas, but maybe they're a little bit too dark. Maybe it's a little bit too adult. Maybe it's a little bit too sensitive for the mainstream universe. You can
Mhm.
say, hey, you know what? Let's take a chance on this. We got the Black Label line over here. Give us something. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think that the idea of Black Label just provides this outlet for creativity in comic books, that you don't normally get in mainline publishing because they do have status quos to maintain. And again, I preach about continuity. I love continuity. I think that that's one of the best parts about reading a comic book is the rich history and continuity behind these characters and the stories that have been told. But I also think that the medium is so complex and so versatile that there should be a place for those stories. And I think that that's something that Black Label can kind of be a mechanism for. So I 100% agree with you, man. I'm with that 110% of the way. I also think it was a missed opportunity to not put the Batman Who Laughs in Black Label. I mean,
Yeah.
it is so it I mean, it is essentially Batman going through an existential crisis,
Yeah.
and amongst other things, it is pretty gory, pretty violent, pretty topical. So I think that was also a missed opportunity at a potential Black Label book, but we'll see where things move forward from here. Like I said, I hope that what's been announced will be great. I hope I enjoy everything, and I hope we get more announcements for some, for a wider breadth of storytelling to be had. That's really all I'm looking for out of this line. And I think we're looking for the same thing in this line. Really, is just a creative outlet for experienced and proven storytellers to do what they do best
Yeah.
and to provide their very unique perspectives on characters and concepts that are iconic. So,
Yeah.
the Black Label line has a lot of potential. It has I think it is nearly limitless as long as we can at least try to mitigate any potential, you know, off steps from here on out. So
Mhm.
we'll see. We'll see, man. Like I said, Batman Last Night on Earth has been a tremendous step in the right direction, and I really hope they continue on this path. Because I mean, for me, like I don't think I need to love every book in the Black Label line. I think that I will be happy if I can at least acknowledge a story is well done, that the visual narrative that the artist is providing, or that the art team is providing, will be substantial and be impactful
Yeah.
just as much as the story is, because I think that's something that's often neglected in comics sometimes. We often are fine with these cool, crazy splash pages, but looking at the visual and sequential narrative style of comic books and how important that is for an artist is something that I think, again, comic book fans tend to overlook, because
Well,
we want the big, crazy, hulking Dorito chip looking superheroes looking cool. And I hope we get that. I really hope that Black Label provides an outlet for that.
Well, I think it's also important to mention, and I'll use myself as an example, is as much as I might like to hear myself talk and I bitch and I whine and I complain and all this other jazz. The fact of the matter is that I've been collecting comic books long enough. I'll admit that I'm a little bit conservative. I get set in my ways when I read comic books.
Hmm.
I do develop preconceptions in terms of how I do have expectations. And what I like about Black Label is I know in advance that Black Label is going to shake up my sensibilities. I know in advance that if I buy a Black Label comic, that I should expect the unexpected. And I'm prepared for it. And I'm prepared to be proven wrong, saying, hey, you know what? I never thought of that character that way.
Hmm.
I might pick up Greg Rucka's Black Label Wonder Woman and say, oh my God, this is much better than I realized.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick it up. Right? I'm going to check it out. But I get more upset when I pick up mainstream Wonder Woman because I might have some more preconceptions, and I might want to rock the. I might, I tend to be more harsh on the mainstream than I am on a comic that I know to be intentionally created to be an outlier, to have you look at the same character in a different light. So the opportunity for Black Label, there's nothing that's going to drive me more crazy than if I pick up Rucka's Wonder Woman Black Label and it's the same Wonder Woman that I've read when he wrote Wonder Woman Rebirth. That's
Hmm.
not what Black Label is supposed to be. I want my sensibilities to be challenged with Black Label. I don't want the same old, same old. And
But
that's going to be the test with Black Label moving forward.
well, let me play devil's advocate for you here, though. Is Scott Snyder's Batman tonally different from the Batman he was writing in the New 52? And
Well,
is the fact that it is, that the New 52 Batman is a foundational part of what Snyder's going to be building in this book, or at least what he's leading us to believe, is that a downfall of this book?
Well, I think it's totally related if you extrapolate the worst case scenario. I mean, it's basically the end of the earth, and the earth is pretty much destroyed. So
Hmm.
I mean, to follow your logic, yes, it's very different. I mean, certainly the setting, it's the end of the world. We don't want the mainstream DC universe to have the outcome that Snyder's Last Night on Earth presumes as its storyline.
Hmm.
But it's a fantastic premise to start one off. So it's ideally suited for Black Label. I mean, you can imagine an Armageddon Batman story. You can have an Armageddon Wonder Woman story. You can have a post Armageddon Superman story. And maybe that's what Black Label will be. But again, I hear what you're saying. I mean, sometimes we don't necessarily that there has to be something that rocks the boat. And what rocks the boat with Batman Last Man on Earth is the setting itself. It's post Armageddon. It's
That
post destruction of the Earth. We can't have that in the mainstream DC universe. And I'm just saying that there's got to be one core element of the story that's demonstrably different
oh yeah.
than the mainstream in order for Black Label to really shake the sensibilities, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I'm actually pretty glad that I asked that question and got you to elaborate on that a little bit, because I do think one of the strengths of this book is that it is so grounded in Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run. I think it's having read the run and having enjoyed it is so much more, makes this reading experience so much more enriching for me, and I think, again, like you said before, there is something very unique about the setting of the story, and I think there's also something to be said about the style of narrative we go through, right? Like, I'm not going to spoil everything, but I think that the narrative shifts you see throughout the four parts in this first issue are very unique. I think at times they feel very cinematic as well, which is great. I think that when a comic book can feel like a movie, you've accomplished something traumatic for a far smaller budget, which is great. So I hope to continue to see this moving forward, particularly as a Scott Snyder fan and somebody who has really enjoyed that first issue. I hope that this turns out to be his magnum opus, and I hope that
Yeah.
we do get just a creative, you know, a creative outlet in Black Label for big name talent to just do what they do best. Um, but I think without letting myself ramble on and take forever and to eat up everybody's time, unless you had any closing statements about DC Black Label, its future, its past, its present, I think we should be good to wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm hopeful for Black Label's future. I think it's going to be a great line, notwithstanding a little Batwang controversy, and I'm hopeful for the entire DC universe. But Black Label, I think it's had some road bumps, but it's I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to surprise us all, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds.
Yeah, I think this conversation's been very positive for me because it's provided me with a more positive outlook moving forward. I tend to be very pessimistic, being real with myself, and I think having the conversation, of you talking about them seeming to get all of their ducks in a row, I see it, and I hope it's a persisting thing, and I hope that this, excuse me, Black Label can really get off the ground and start soaring. And yeah, I mean, very clearly, I think I will still maintain that I think, the early ongoings of Black Label have had some pretty thorough missteps, but I hope that they can continue to bounce back, and I hope that we get something amazing out of this line. Also, side tangent, I hope Vertigo doesn't go away. Even if we're going to keep it to like a very small, very limited pack of books, I hope we don't lose it. But if we do, I don't think it's permanent because again, everything in comic books are 100% cyclical, and I think that Vertigo has enough weight behind it as a publishing house in and of itself to maintain some level of prestige amongst the comic
Yeah.
book community. So I don't think it'll be permanent. I think I don't I if Vertigo ends up being cut loose for now, I say we get it back within 5 years. I don't think it's going to be tremendously long.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Vertigo, but sales wise, the average Image number one will sell as much as a Vertigo number one, and that's surprising to me because Vertigo has a name, whereas Image, it says something about the success of Image, but even an Image number one doesn't necessarily sell all that well,
Mm.
but the fact that Vertigo has fallen, and I really don't understand why it's fallen as far as it has. Uh, I just, that's a topic for another day. But
I think, yeah, that would be a topic. I think generally speaking, I don't think DC quite knows what they have on their hands with Vertigo right now, and I think they were a little bit too focused on giving everybody and their mom an imprint. Where
well, yeah, but I have to say this though in defense of Vertigo, I I have I have actually I've gotten probably every Vertigo title in the last 15 years,
mm,
all the runs. I've got them all, and I love 90% of it, and people just don't buy it, and I
yeah,
don't know why. And I could again, it's a topic for another day, but we could go after title after title after title, low selling, low selling, low selling, low selling. Gail Simone's Clean Room, that would make $100 million at the box office.
mm,
Amazing series. Nobody bought it. I don't know why. I mean,
yeah.
I know she's a controversial writer in some comic culture war circles, but good lord, anyways,
Yeah, no,
I don't understand it.
yeah, I think that could end up sprawling out to be a topic for another time, but yeah, I see where you're
And
coming
I'm
from.
almost out of Crown.
No, we can't allow that to happen. So, as we come to a close, I did want to thank everybody who came to watch us live. I really appreciate you guys participating in the chat, and I think it really adds to the experience of doing these live streams, and it makes it far more redeeming, if you ask me. So thank you guys so much for coming live. For those of you who are watching this later as a recording, I don't love you any less, I promise. Okay, maybe slightly, but not enough to make a big difference. I appreciate you for watching. Boom, obviously, man, I really appreciate with all of the time crunches going on in your personal life. I appreciate you coming on to sit here and chat comics at some time in the middle of the night, man. So thank you for coming on down.
It's always good to be on your channel, Dark Knight. I love listening to your reviews. I wish you had time. I know you've got your studies and you've got a busy life as well. And again, I just want to tell everyone that I do plan on going to New York Comic Con, staying with going and partying with Dark Knight in New York City at New York Comic Con. I'm looking forward to that in 4 months' time. And and until then, I'm sure we'll have many more live streams before that happens.
Oh, dude, it'll be Crisis on Two Earths, man. It'll be an event. I'm excited for that. I think that there's going to be some really interesting content to be made with the two of us meeting up in New
I
York.
think we could probably get Brian Azzarello to write our Black Label story of our adventure at New York Comic Con.
It depends on who's editing the book, but I'd be game. Shit. Let's see if we can get Bermejo to draw it, and we'll see if he can.
The comic boom.
Man, you're a popular guy tonight, man. But but yeah, at the end of the day, those are our thoughts on the current status of Black Label, where we're hoping to see it go from here, and our thoughts on how things have been handled thus far. Again, thank you guys for watching. Make sure if you enjoyed it to leave a like, comment down below letting us know your thoughts on the state of DC Black Label and where you're hoping to see it go in the future. And of course, make sure you go check out ComicBoom. The link is in the description below to go check him out. If you have not, you are doing yourself a disservice. He makes absolutely awesome content and is really concise in the way he carries himself. So not only does he provide such a thorough such thorough insight into the books that he discusses, he does it in a very reasonable amount of time, much more so than myself. So I give you a lot of credit for that.
That's not true. That's not true. You sell yourself short.
I appreciate that, man. But yeah, so if you guys haven't already, obviously, please make sure to go check him out. He's generating some absolutely awesome content, and look forward to him and I collaborating for the foreseeable future. Obviously, New York Comic Con coming up, so that's going to be a blast. But thank you guys again so much for watching. Thanks to Boom for sitting down and chatting comics. And this is going to be Dark Knight Nation and the Canadian legend himself, ComicBoom, signing out for the evening. Good night, guys. Thanks.
See you guys later.